Break with Rachel Vigil, taking a daily look at the biggest stories in Denver sports and interacting live with you, the Coffee Break fam. So sit back, relax, grab a cup of joe, and enjoy your coffee break. Here's your host, Rachel Vigil.
Are the Denver Broncos giving us mixed signals ahead of the NFL draft? It sure seems to feel like that. And on this very it's a Merilatt Monday, everybody. So let's bring in our very own James Merilatt, because it really does feel like we're getting mixed signals. And I kind of wonder if we're starting to get it on purpose, right? You never want to give anybody too much insight into what you're going to do, what you're going to, move up, move down, how that's all going to work out. But James, do you feel like we're getting some mixed signals? I'm going to play a clip here in a second, but with everything coming out of the owners' meetings today.
Yeah, we are. Now, you're giving him the benefit of the doubt that this is like some coordinated effort to put out some sort of smoke screen. I don't think they're playing chess. I think they're playing checkers. So I'm not going to give him that. You got Sean Payton saying one thing, George Payton saying another thing. I don't think it's outside the realm of possibilities. I think it's more likely than not that those two guys just aren't on the same page. So that's what I think's going on here. But listen, I like your optimism. I like the way you're thinking they're all Machiavellian here, trying to get people off the scent. I'm just not buying it.
Okay, well, if that's the case, Greg Penner then also lied because he was talking about how George and Sean, they spend so many hours together looking over film, talking with players, etc. That came out today. But realistically, the way that I'm kind of looking at this is Sean Payton this morning said that it was realistic. He actually called out Ian Rappaport on his report saying that they weren't probably going to move up. And he says it's realistic that they could move up. And then we have George Payton, who kind of talked to all the Denver media earlier. You guys can take a listen to this clip.
If there's a player you love, Sean talked about being in love with the player, and then you do whatever it takes to go get him, but you don't want to panic. There's going to be a really good player at 12. And unless we have a total consensus love for another player, we just stay at 12 or we move back.
So you stay at 12 or you move back is what I got out of that, unless you absolutely love a player, which agreed, like that makes sense. But just the fact that Sean was like, realistically, yeah, we're moving up. And he's saying 12 or move back. I'm like, there's nothing going on here that's making sense.
Yeah, I mean, look, they both kind of said that all options are on the table, which is what you expect to hear from them. But you can kind of read between the lines of what do they talk about first and what do they talk about, with a little bit more detail and a little bit more information. Sean Payton was all about, like you said, calling out Ian Rappaport. We can trade up. It's realistic, making sure that idea is still out there because that's probably the idea he wants. He wants to go up and get whichever quarterback it is that he loves. And J.J. McCarthy seems like the guy that everybody's talking about. So that's why he's all in favor of that. And George is like the opposite of a riverboat gambler. He wants to stand pat. He wants to trade back. He wants to just, not push all his chips into the table. He's the guy that folds after the single blind every time. It's like, geez, George, you're going to be at the table all night, but you're not going to win anything. That's what I feel like is going on here is Sean Payton's putting all the chips in, and George Payton is just fold. At some point, somebody's going to have to win because those are two different strategies.
Well, we've all agreed that Sean Payton is the one in charge of Broncos country right now at this very moment. So I would lean more towards him. And I thought it was interesting that he called out Arizona's GM and was like, it's a good time to be this guy because everybody is going to be looking to make some moves with Arizona.
Yeah, although that's interesting to me because Arizona's sitting there at 4, right? And there's 3 quarterbacks everybody loves, supposedly. Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels. So everybody wants to trade up to 4 to take J.J. McCarthy? Like, that's why? Like, 4 and 5 are both going to take receivers, right? Arizona's not taking a quarterback. They got Kyler. The Chargers aren't taking a quarterback. They got Justin Herbert. The Giants are sitting there at 6. They're taking one most likely.
Yep.
So I guess you could blow away one of those two teams and ensure that you get the 4th best quarterback in the draft. That I heard Cecil on with Mike and Stink this morning. He's talking about you got to get up to 3 because the Patriots want Jaden Daniels. He's not going to be there. You do whatever it takes to get there. That's the same jump from 12 to 3 that the Niners made for Trey Lance a couple of years ago.
Yep.
You're giving up your first-round pick this year, next year, and the year after to go get a guy that heading into the national title game nobody was talking about, and everybody was saying how great Michael Penix Jr. was. Now, one game and a bunch of workout in their shorts and T-shirts, and all of a sudden he's the 4th overall pick in the draft. That's nuts. That's bonkers.
Okay, so let's play GM real quick. You and I are both George Payton. For me, I'm willing to give up next year's first round, but that's it. Like after that, you're really starting to play with the future. And then say you throw in like a second or third, I don't care. But like next year's first is the only first I'm willing to give up to move into it. What about you?
No, I'm not giving it up because this team's going to be terrible. That's going to be a top 5.
Be terrible regardless.
Like, so they're giving up a number 12 this year, a top 5 pick last year, most likely.
Yep.
To go up and get a guy and to get JJ McCarthy. Like, listen, if they were getting Caleb Williams or they were getting Jaden Daniels or they were getting one of those guys that everybody thinks is for sure is going to be really good.
Yeah.
But do we know that JJ McCarthy is better than Bo Nix? Do we know they can't just trade into the top of the second round and take Michael Penix Jr. and get a guy that's just as good? I just think you're better off staying at 12, adding Brock Bowers, being terrible, getting a top 5 pick, and taking Shedeur Sanders next year. I think that's a better strategy than this path.
Is Brock Bowers the next Travis Kelce? Excuse me.
I think he has a better chance of being the next Travis Kelce or George Kittle than JJ McCarthy has of being the next great quarterback. I'm just not seeing it. I mean, listen, Michigan went undefeated, and so you can't question their strategy. They, run the ball a lot, but I also don't think Jim Harbaugh and the coaching staff up there is just letting a guy's talent go to waste. If JJ McCarthy was that great, why is he just handing the ball off all game, throwing 12 passes in a game? It just doesn't make much sense to me. Something's not adding up.
Have I told you my favorite rumor that's going on right now around the draft?
No.
Our producer, Joey, actually on the back end, is the one who told me this. And he's a Minnesota Vikings fan to everybody. So he says the Vikings are collecting so many draft picks right now because they want to trade up and go to the Chargers, get Justin Herbert to go to the Vikings, and then JJ McCarthy would go to the Chargers.
Okay, because Jim Harbaugh is that in love with this quarterback that
he said he was the best quarterback. Don't be surprised if he's the number 1 quarterback taken on the board.
Listen, if I'm a Vikings fan, I love that rumor. Yeah, you're getting Justin Herbert. Sign me up for that. And Justin Herbert is one of those guys that gets a lot of hype and doesn't get a lot of criticism, even though he hasn't won a playoff game yet, but has all the talent in the world. It's been a bit of a mess there in LA with the move and with that coaching staff, and now Harbaugh's there. Boy, you talk about a gamble if you're Jim Harbaugh. You're going to get rid of Justin Herbert and go with JJ McCarthy just because you coached him in college. I think if I'm Jim Harbaugh, I'm looking at it saying, hey, I managed to win with that guy at the collegiate level. I'm not putting myself in the position where now I got to try and win with that guy at the pro level. I'm not as high on JJ McCarthy as everybody else, because if you get in a time machine and go back 3 months, 3 months, nobody thinks he's a second round pick. Now all of a sudden he's going 4th overall or 5th. That's an eye roll for me. I just don't get it, Rachel.
I always question. I mean, obviously there has to be rookies quarterbacks every single year, but I'm always somebody that leans more towards the veteran than the rookie because they've been there. They've done that for like a year, right? And so I know you have to have rookies because that's obviously how the game continues to grow. But every single time I'm like, do I really want the Broncos to go after a rookie QB that we don't know, like JJ McCarthy, right? The top 3 are a different conversation over just like a veteran quarterback. But then I also hate the idea of picking and playing another quarterback like they've done for so many years. I just feel like I'm so conflicted right now as a Broncos fan. And as somebody who has to cover this team, I'm like, I just don't even know which way I want them to go because it's going to be a disaster one way or another.
Well, they've tried everything other than taking a quarterback high in the draft, right? They went the rookie route with Drew Lock. They've gone with numerous veterans with, signing Teddy and Joe Flacco and all the rest of it. The blockbuster trade. I mean, they've tried everything other than, hey, spend a top 5 pick on a quarterback. So at least that's the one thing they've got left to try. But I have no interest in bringing in a journeyman quarterback. I just have no interest in mediocre. So most of the guys have already been signed.
Oh, there's nobody left now.
But there are 2 names I'll throw out at you. I just mentioned one, Drew Lock and Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson was the number 2 overall pick in the draft a few years ago. Do we know for a fact that JJ McCarthy is better than Drew Lock, that he's better than Zach Wilson? You could get Zach Wilson for a 7th round pick, spend the number 12 pick on Brock Bowers. They're not going to be just as good, if not better, this year if they do that. Nobody can convince me of that. They just can't.
We had posted that clip of James talking about Zach Wilson, and I was dying at the comments because there were people that wait, I actually agree with James on this one thing, or there are people like, absolutely not. And it's just, I mean, if you can get a 7th round, why the heck not? But I don't think Zach Wilson is also the answer. It's like Daniel Jones, right? I kind of look at Daniel Jones and I'm like, this has been a disaster. I don't even know what team is going to look at him if the Giants really do move on from Daniel Jones.
Yeah, and the problem with Daniel Jones is he's got the big contract, right?
Yeah.
Zach Wilson, you're getting a rookie deal, so it's not gonna cost you anything essentially in draft capital.
Yeah.
I mean, you're sending him a pick that is most likely not going to make your team anyway. And then you've got a year to decide, hey, can this guy be the guy? And if he's not, you don't have to give him another deal. You're going to be bad this year. And then you draft Shedeur Sanders next year. Like, that just makes more sense to me than rolling the dice on J.J. McCarthy. And if he's not the guy, you're stuck with him for like 3 years because you don't have any other first-round picks.
Yeah.
You traded him away to get that guy. So you're going to find out he's not the answer this year. Going to be terrible. Be in the top 5 and sit there and go, oh, well, we sent that to Arizona, so we don't get a chance to draft Shedeur Sanders. I just think, man, if they're wrong on that, if they make that trade and they're wrong, you think the Russell Wilson deal set this franchise back.
Oh.
They will have traded 5 first-round picks and 3 second-round picks for Russell Wilson, Sean Payton, and J.J. McCarthy. That is the definition of overpaying. I mean, that would just be ludicrous to me.
So are you saying that you think the Denver Broncos are going to be the worst team in football next year?
They're in the conversation. I mean, Carolina is going to be in that conversation.
Because if you're getting Shedeur, according to everybody in the world right now, he's going number 1 overall.
Well, according to his father and his head coach, but he may, and I think the Broncos will be close enough. They may get the number 1 pick. They may earn that on their own, or they'll at least be close enough that it's not a huge leap. And then you start looking at, well, who would the other teams be that are there? If it's Carolina, are they going to punt on Bryce Young and draft Shedeur, or would they be willing to, trade you a little bit?
What would you do? Poor Bryce Young.
I want to see what Bryce Young does when he doesn't have Frank Reich and company as his head coach. I think he was put into a little bit of a bad situation. He also didn't have a ton around him, which I love that story coming out now too of the Broncos. They're going to go with Jarrett Stidham, but they got to add some pieces around him. I said that all year long about Russell Wilson, that he's got, he's trying to soar like an eagle and he's flying with turkeys and nobody wanted to hear it. Now all of a sudden they got to upgrade from Adam Troutman. Yeah, no kidding.
It always cracks me.
It drives me nuts. Like, Russell Wilson was supposed to win with that crew, but now they got to go get some talent. Okay, well, but these are the same people that want to trade away all their first-round picks. Like, it doesn't make any sense. It's like nobody's looking 2 or 3 steps down the road. It's just one thing at a time. How do we get JJ? Okay, let's do that. Mortgage our future. And then you got nothing around him. What's he going to do? Throw 2-yard out passes to Adam Troutman? That's not going to work. That's not going to get him anywhere.
Yeah, I'm scared that they're going to just give away everything for a quarterback to move up. And Cecil Lammey is all about it. I know he talks about it on Orange and Blue today. You can catch that 4 p.m. every single weekday. And they've been doing like random episodes like on the weekends and stuff. They did one yesterday. So plenty of good stuff coming from them. But I do want to talk about the uniforms because that's kind of what exploded Twitter this morning, speaking on all of these uniforms. And they did like a little teaser video. It looks cool, the threads, but they said they are staying with the same colors and the same logo. What's your feel?
Same colors was a no-brainer. I mean,
yes.
Man, if they changed that, there'd be a revolt. I remember when they switched to their current uniforms and they were the blue jerseys before they came out with the orange jerseys. People were not upset that they were wearing navy blue at home. So, and it was still the same color combo. It just was what was more prominent. So colors make sense. The logo, I'm on the fence. I mean, if they wanted to go back to the old D logo, that'd be great. There's some nostalgia there. They never won anything with it though. So this one's got 3 championships to it. I'm fine with that. The main thing that needs updating is that curved stripe down the outside.
Yep.
But that tells me if it's the same logo in the same colors, it ain't gonna be a huge change. It's just not.
They said they're doing elements of Colorado. If you had to place your guess right now, what is that?
Well, it's got to be some sort of mountain effect, I would guess. I kind of roll my eyes at that. Like, this is like you're trying to do too much. Like, if you think
Everybody
about
does it.
if you think about like the best uniforms going, like I think the Raiders it's a super clean, simple Nobody's going to like that I say that, but they have a great uniform.
Terrible.
What's the element of Oakland, LA, or Vegas that's in that? None. Nothing.
They start adding little money signs like somewhere in it just to represent Las Vegas.
And there's chips and there's all the rest of it. I think sometimes it's trying too hard. I don't know that, like, I think the Bears have a classic uniform. When you look at the Bears uniform, what part of it is, oh, that's Chicago? No, it's not. The Steelers do, because the logo, the three tridents, like,
yeah,
that's from US Steel. Okay. That one works pretty well. But for the most part, I think you just have a good logo, have a good color scheme, and make a sharp look. Don't try too hard.
I was gonna say, because if they just added mountains or some trees or something like that to the uniform and just changed the like stripes, like how much money did we pay for the design on this, Penner Group?
Let's think about it. What other elements of Colorado could there be? What's the state animal? Bighorn sheep?
Go Rams.
State fish is the rainbow trout.
No.
State bird is the lark bunting.
They're not doing the flower.
The columbine. The state tree is the blue spruce. And it's the Centennial State. That's the state nickname. That's all I got. That's my second grade Colorado history coming back.
I was impressed, actually. The bird, I had no idea. So I was very impressed.
Did you know that the Denver Nuggets' original name was the Denver Larks?
I did
after
not.
The lark bunting?
Tuesday trivia. I have to do that eventually one of these days. Good to know.
That's what won the fan vote. And then they're like, no, we're not going to be there.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm very curious to see what these elements are going to be and when they're actually going to release the jerseys. It is interesting that they had everything come out today. Like, I feel like we just got like news drops all morning long from different things revolving the quarterback, the, visit with JJ McCarthy, not going to the pro day, but actually doing a workout with him. I feel like we just got so much information today and it's like time to digest it all. And I'm like, wowza.
Yeah, well, we heard from Sean, we heard from George, we heard from Damani. So they were all speaking down at the owners' meetings.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was sort of a flood of information. It'll be interesting to see if anything else comes out of it the rest of the week. But did they maybe I missed it. Did they give us a timeline? Like, when are we going to see these uniforms?
I haven't heard anything. The most I heard was the elements of Colorado and the jerseys and such, but coming soon. I feel like you have to, if you tease something is coming soon, you got to do it within like the next 6 weeks.
Okay. That's the window, 6 weeks?
That's my window.
The soon is 6 weeks?
Yeah. What's your window for soon?
Like this afternoon?
Oh, yeah, definitely not. Is that what your kids tell you? They're like, I'll be home soon, Dad. I'll see you tonight.
Yeah. If my kids said I'll be home soon and I didn't see him for 6 weeks, I'd be a little worried.
Fair enough. Last thing that came out of the owners meeting that I feel like a lot of people are probably going to be happy to hear in a way, but George Payton took accountability for Russell Wilson. And I feel like this is something we've all obviously put a lot on him, but was it nice enough to hear that he actually took the accountability of it? And will it have people look at George Payton in a less harsh way? Or is it still, they've set this team back for so many years that nope, you've still screwed them over?
Well, I mean, I guess it's nice to hear the honesty. Okay, I'll give him credit for that. But there are a lot of people, Will Peterson wrote a really good column about this a couple of weeks ago, like, why is George still here? It's a little insulting that he's the one who gets to cut Russell Wilson. So now that he admits it was him, it's like, okay, well, it's officially him that made these mistakes. Why does he still have a job? Now, my counter to that is, well, it's not a very attractive job, right? Like, whoever comes in, if you're going to be the GM, you're not really the GM. Sean Payton's a GM. You're hamstrung by $85 million of dead cap over the next 2 seasons. We've seen so far this free agency period that they're not going to spend much money. So you get to come in and inherit the tight purse strings, the no draft picks, and the mess that George Payton created. Plus, you get to deal with Sean Payton. I think part of the reason he's there is I don't know that they'd get a lot of great candidates lining up for that job. I really don't.
Well, I mean, there's only 32 of them, right? So I feel like anybody can ask to look at a GM job and be like, okay, I can take over this thing. But I get the point of this is the first time the Denver Broncos have been this bad and are no longer really looked at that gold standard. And how long do you have before you really lose that title with being bad?
I think, listen, if they surprised everybody and had a winning record this year, I think they start moving right back up those ranks. They got a lot of goodwill that's been built up in the last 40 years out of their 60-year history, but it's starting to it's starting to look like the siding on the house needs a fresh coat of paint. That's for
Does
sure.
that make you sad, James? Because I feel like you're a little like, wait a second.
Look at all this history behind me. Like,
know.
yeah, it makes me sad. Actually, it makes me mad. It doesn't make me sad. It makes me mad, Rachel, if I'm being honest, that they've let it get to this point. But, it would be a good job in terms of you're coming into a city with a team with great history, a city that supports the team. You're not going somewhere where it's like, if you were going to LA, I mean, the Chargers and the Rams are an afterthought unless they're in the Super Bowl, and then they're still sharing the spotlight with everything else that's going on.
Yeah.
And you've got owners with deep pockets, right? You're not going to the Bengals. You're not going to the Cardinals. It's a couple of teams that are historically cheap. That makes it a good job, but that's more of a long-term makes it a good job. It doesn't make it a good job in 2024 or 2025. I think it's a bad job the next 2 years. I would make George stay here and clean up his own mess. Just don't let him make any more.
Don't let him make any decisions. Only Sean Payton, please. Okay, real quick though, back to the jerseys. Do we feel like the Walter Penn? Oh my gosh, it is such a Monday. Thank you. My goodness, it's the most Monday of Mondays, I swear. Do we feel like they didn't listen to the fans though when it came to the jerseys? I feel like everybody wanted to go back to the D. I feel like people wanted to see some big change, and yet we're really not seeing any of that.
Yeah, I don't know. I was in the camp of I didn't like when they sent out the survey and what does everybody think about the stadium? Like, when's the last thing that was a good decision that was made by a big committee? Like,
I'm going to remind you that at our next team meeting.
You're getting too much input. Yeah, at some point somebody's got to be the dictator and say, no, we're going this way. I just think people, especially because people tend to look at life through nostalgia tinted glasses. Right? Oh, it was so great in the good old days. Oh, those classic orange uniforms. I don't know. Like I say, they won 3 Super Bowls in this look. So I think they're better off to just, look at all the options, what jumps out at them, stick to their convictions, and people get used to it. The people hated the last uniform change. They won a Super Bowl their first 2 years in them, and all of a sudden everybody loved them. So if they go 4-13 this year, it ain't going to matter what they're wearing.
Fair. But is it time for a new era? Like, the Pat Bowlen era is done. And while we love to, give credit where credit is due with that era, with the new ownership and stuff like that, should they have just changed the logo and completely had redo everything?
Yeah, you can sell me on that. Yeah. I would have been fine with that. Just a whole new look instead of just don't go back. You can cross the same river. It's never the same water. Don't live in the past. Like, either stay with what you got or come up with something new. You can do throwbacks. That's what a throwback uniform is for.
Yeah.
But I think going back to the old days, typically speaking, doesn't make much sense.
No, I'm kind of with you on that one. I see all the comments coming in of people who hated the old uniforms. Not everyone wanted to go back to the D, loved the D, wish they were going there. Plenty of good stuff. But James Merilatt, it's always a pleasure to have you on. Our Merilatt Mondays, I love them. But to everybody else in the comments, thank you so much for giving your opinion. I truthfully do appreciate it every single day. And then make sure you watch Orange and Blue today. Cecil and Mace are down there in Florida at the owners meeting. I know it's going to be a great episode. So definitely tune in to that. And we will see you guys back 10 a.m. for Denver Sports Daily and 12 p.m. for another episode of Coffee Break. See you guys then. Bye, everybody.